So this thought of, Boombox, which we came to with the point system is like, hey, as a fan, add the artist to your Boombox, stamp it on the record, right? And as that artist gets popular, you will earn, and that is your reward for it. And then this interesting thing that, this mechanic as well is like, hey, you start adding points or, adding an artist and allocating points to that artist, some fraction of those points will get banked for the artist in the future, right? And that is, again, when we talk about incentives and how it, crypto can tie everything together to make it meaningful both for the fan as well as for the artist. That's where, we saw it really getting interesting, and why we were like, hey, this is the way.
Episode 58 of Invest in Music with Boombox. Today we're joined by Naveen and Jack, the co-founders of a new app to share your favorite artists and earn when others add them too. As a reminder, you can collect this episode on investinmusic.xyz. We talk about everything from launching an app using tools like Privy and Stack to how to build an app in 2024 with platforms like Warpcast and much, much more. We covered a lot, so without further ado, let's get into it. Episode 58 of Invest in Music with Naveen and Jack from Boombox. We are back. We got the Boombox co-founders, Naveen and Jack, in the building with us today. How are we feeling, guys?
Good, man.
Stellar.
Excited to do this.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a fun couple weeks watching this app roll out. I mean, we have a ton of ground to cover here. To get started, why don't you start with a quick overview? What is Boombox? And then maybe a little bit of a background on yourselves.
Sure. Yeah, just in short, Boombox is basically an app to share your favorite artist and then earn Boom as you do so, and as your favorite artists grow. And really what we're trying to get to is create a safe outlet for fans to express their fandom, and then find a meaningful way for them to get rewards for doing that.
And we can go deeper kind of on the call a little bit about, why we have these learnings around fan expression and stuff like that. But to give kind of the play-by-play of how does Boombox work, to start, users are given 250 Boom, and they have to select their favorite artist to add to their Boombox. And all these artists kind of cost a range between 1 and 99 Boom. And that from there, the journey really begins on users curating their own collection of artists, and kind of cleanly sharing, expressing their music taste, which includes adding artists and granting access to these gate-kept artist communities, which are really exciting to us. So we can dive in more there. In terms of our backgrounds, I used to work kind of on the finance side of things, and we really had a passion for music and a real frustration for just connecting with people and wanting to connect with more people around my music taste and the artists that I love. And I was really frustrated by, artists would come to town and I would never know who to hit up to go to these shows because I didn't know what type of music my friends liked. So I ended up going back to grad school and focusing in music tech specifically, and really wanting to create something that I could use as a solution. And that's how I kind of ended up connecting with Naveen.
Yeah, my background is, so I on the tech side for many years, I started, as a coder, in the aerospace industry, doing kind of strategy, and to a point where I was working these advanced algorithms, was interesting at the high level, moved my way up into the corporate ranks and was doing strategy, but really struggled, similar to what Jack mentioned, really struggled with what am I doing that's meaningful, and how do I take what I've learned in the corporate world and feel like I'm doing something that's a little bit more rewarding to my life. And as in the day job, I was looking at emerging technology, and trying to vet which technologies were had the merit to either invest into or result in sales. And as I was looking at these emerging tech, I found myself trying to apply that lens that I had learned into my daily life. It's something I was a little bit more passionate about than aerospace. And it always went back to music for me. And as a kid, I was in front of the radio, or trying to record songs, making mixtapes and stuff for friends. And that's always kind of been my core sense of my identity. So I found myself kind of going back to that. Where if I thought about, in tech, vetting tech, you're always trying to look at what is a pain point that has to be solved for me, it was like this pain point, like Jack mentioned, like I'd experience that on a daily basis where I would have this song or this artist that I love, and like going to socials to express it was like how I put that out in the world, and it always came back like hollow. Like no one responded, no likes, nothing. And this like moment where I was looking for connection and like expression just fell flat. And that's something that like happened way back, and it would happen over time. And like it got to a point where I was like, okay, I need to do something about this, right? This is enough of a pain point for me that it's worth my time. So I really like on the side started diving in a little bit. Eventually worked on my first music app called Soul Sense back in the day, where it was, around the story about how a fan story of how a song hits them connects with an artist story, why they made the song. Very similar to scenes like today, which is like you're seeing that emerge in the crypto space of like how you merge the two sides. And so I had done a couple of things, and really it wasn't until 2020 that, scaling that became tough. And I realized that what Jack and I started hitting on and that why we connected was how streaming data was going to change how people share because of the reduction in friction that happens when you share your data rather than like one link at a time.
Nice. And I guess I'm curious to hear for you guys, what was the origin of, you guys starting to work together? Obviously, I would love to hear more about the product you were building previously with Anthems and Fanalytics. Take me through kind of like the origin story of you guys coming together as co-founders and setting down this road to build what has now eventually become Boombox.
Yeah, I can dive in here if you want to.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I'll maybe start it because like I was building, like I mentioned, in the space, very obsessed with like how do you solve this problem. So I was building in the space, prior to Soul Sense, started like hitting on what I teased on, which is like, how does data change the game here? And as I started double clicking into terms of like, how does data allow scale? Is when I came across an article that Jack had written about the future of social, music expression and the role that data plays. Jack, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, and that was kind of an obsession I always had too. Was like there were so many that this graveyard of companies that had tried to create the social media of music sort of apps was so large, and I made it an obsession of mine to just interview and talk to a lot of these founders and people who had tried to do it before, and maybe why had they failed and what had they not tried yet, and kind of landed on the same way that Naveen had separately, that like listener data was a really big opportunity area. And we see Spotify Wrapped every year break the internet, and people are so proud of this listener data that expresses who they are. And maybe that could be a really clean, seamless way for social to be unlocked. So as Naveen said, I wrote kind of this white paper article about all the people that had tried it before and what is a new lens that could be tried in the future. Actually, like a mutual advisor who's still an advisor of ours right now, Charlie Kaplan, who works at AudioMac and runs product there, connected us and was like, I think you two should talk. And so Naveen and I think, had a 30-minute calendar invite and went like 2 hours over and just really brainstormed. And we're just like, we need to build something in this space. And that kind of birthed what is Anthems, which we've been kind of working on for the past couple of years, and happy to talk about that too. And it's kind of the learnings from Anthems that we've said, now is the time to build and apply those learnings to Boombox, and doing it within a Web3 lens just makes all too much sense. And we're really excited about it.
I definitely want to do a deep dive on it. I would say, to give some color on my side, the first thing that stood out to me was a mutual friend of ours, Rob Abloh, had mentioned that you guys had built this product called Fanalytics. And there's a big rabbit hole here in terms of, how Fanalytics came out of Anthems. But every year you have Spotify Wrapped, you see all these people sharing their music data. They're sharing the artists that they like, the songs they listen to. And there always felt like a lot more surface area to be explored there. And one thing that I found very interesting about what you guys were building is that was the entire focal point of the company, whether it was Anthems or Fanalytics or now Boombox. To me, it kind of felt like just widening this design space around social music platforms in general. And I think we've seen this many times over the years, but I definitely echo the sentiment that I listen to music all day, every day. I kind of have an idea of what my friends like if I've been to shows with them or I get to know them on a personal level, but there's not really a way to discover and see like who they're into in the same way that you can just go and see on their Instagram what they like or go and see, on their Twitter what they're tweeting about or something like that. And so I think when we connected, it just sounds like we had kind of reached a lot of the same conclusions, even down to like the way in which these social music platforms are designed. And it's something that we'll talk about more, but currently if you want to join a quote unquote fan club, it's obviously very artist dependent. There's an expectation that that artist is going to be present in that room. And so I'll pause for a second there. And I guess I would love to hear the backstory behind Fanalytics, since that is really the first time that we crossed paths, and sort of how you guys arrived there after having been building anthems for a period of time prior to that.
Yeah, so Fanalytics was kind of like the 100th domino to fall in terms of a lot of learnings we'd had prior to it. So just to like very quickly summarize, we kind of did Fanalytics as our first side stealth project outside of anthems for the first time. And what led us to Fanalytics was, even going back to the inception of anthems, was the assumption that a platform could exist around social music discovery, which was, I follow 10 of my friends. Every day I check an app because I want to hear what they listen to, kind of similar to what you were mentioning, Cooper. And we saw the use case for anthems really transitioned after like about 2 weeks of app usage to expression. They just wanted to talk about their own music that they loved. They wanted to share it to social media. They wanted to document and track it. They wanted to know what they ranked for artists and all that stuff. So that was our first huge kind of inflection point in learning that led us towards this path to Fanalytics. So we kind of pivoted to more so expression building for fans rather than social discovery at that point. And then it was largely in the lane of like songs. So people expressing what songs they loved. And then that second inflection point was like, actually, people want to talk about artists here. And like something that we talk about a lot is like, how many songs do you have posters of on your bedroom wall? Like you just don't, the super fandom doesn't exist for a song. It exists for an artist. And that was another big learning for us after we pivoted to expression, and we ended up launching this feature within the Anthems app, which gained a ton of retention, which was signing artists. So you would sign an artist to your platform, and you would kind of gain points and things like that for their relative popularity in the world. And people loved it, and people were really proud of it. And the gamification really amplified that retention. And then one of the biggest feature requests we got was, I want to talk to high overlap people within these behind. I want to know who else has added this artist or signed this artist. And that's what kind of was those three things that were like, you know what, we need to build this thing. And we ended up calling it Fanalytics, which applies those three learnings. And it's like, what if we built something that would use the same tools that allowed our platform to get, different anthems platforms to get over millions of users in terms of clean expression. And then if we allowed them to do that and we gave them kind of a CTA to join a fan community, would they do it? So we kind of built it in a couple weeks, launched it, got over 1 million users of it in about a week. But the coolest thing to us, I thought, was we had over 30,000 people sign up for this community waitlist for an app or a platform that hadn't been built yet. And that was really, really cool. And we're like, oh shit, we're onto something about like fans wanting to express here and wanting to connect with others who love those artists. And that's kind of when we started talking Coop, and yeah, I'll pause there.
Love that. Nivian, anything you want to add in on your side?
I mean, I think Jack hit it. I mean, I think Fanalytics basically corroborated like everything we were seeing in anthems with like, I think it was September of 2023. We did the sign artist feature that Jack mentioned. And we like started there with like, you have this scarce amount of like artists you can sign on a weekly basis. And we were tracking what percentage of the users used all three of their credits. And it was like 95 to 99, somewhere really, really high. I don't know the exact number off the top anymore, but like that was the most addictive habit we had in anthems, like on our whole run, and that was like the signal, like, oh crap, like it's definitely around artist centric fandom. And and then again, to his point of like seeing desire to be part of community, we saw on anthems when you add a song, we had like a pop up. We still do, right? Is you add a song, you're able to see who else has added that song, and finding like minded fans, like Jack mentioned. That was a huge signal in anthems, and then seeing it again in fan analytics around the artists to join that community. It was like, again, corroborating that like demand signal that we saw.
It was really good timing too, because when we started chatting, it was around December of 2023. And I think at that point in time, Fanalytics had had this major viral moment. Obviously, Spotify Wrapped had just come out, so that was very top of mind. And I think that we just really aligned around this idea that, what Jack just said there, that super fans gravitate more towards artists than they do towards individual songs. For myself, having been really deep in sort of the on-chain music world, historically, all of the apps had been focused on collecting songs. And you have these token gated fan club experiences where you come into your favorite artist, you buy an NFT pass for $5. But one thing I always struggled with is they all felt very siloed. It felt like there wasn't really like a general home base where if I'm a fan of many different artists, which we all are, like how do I express my fans across the board, my artists across the board, and not one individual artist that I like specifically? And so, I think where we really gravitated towards was how do we build this tool that leverages the elements of crypto that I think are exciting from the on-chain music perspective, from the collecting perspective, from the status perspective, but apply that more to the focal point of fandom around artists more so than fandom around specific songs. So I guess I'll pause there for a second. I know you guys have a really interesting way of thinking about this sort of like bottom-up discovery funnel when it comes to artists expressing or fans expressing the artists that they love. I'd love for you to maybe give some more color and context on that.
Yeah, I mean, even as you talk to it now, right? Like, what we see generally as a fan is like this artist has a Discord and this other artist has a Discord, or they have another fan club, and you're asked to constantly join these fan clubs. And like you're mentioning, it's like all disaggregated. And so as a fan, it's just so much effort. And the more effort there is, the more likely you're going to churn as an engaged user of that fan base. And so what we feel like we're really doing well is getting the fan to show up merely by what they want to do, which is like express their fandom across artists. And it's about them and their identity and expression. And if you're able to enable a community to like spawn out of that in this very aggregated manner on behalf of the user experience, the fan experience, you're talking about a lot massive scale and like engagement and retention, because like everything is in your central place for you, the fan, rather than like having to like share your attention or energy across platforms.
Totally. And I 100% agree with all that. And to only add on, like, there's this whole mod culture that exists right now where, like, whether it's Discord, whether it's Reddit, whether it's wherever, like, super fans want to be empowered to run communities and talk about an artist and all this stuff. And, like, the example we always talk about is, like, there's these subreddits of artist fandom that have hundreds of thousands of users and stuff like that. And artists are in none of them. It is purely super fans and mods that create that content and kind of keep that enriched. And they need to be recognized. Like, I think one of the biggest mistakes sometimes is these mod type personalities are taken for granted. And if you can create a point system or a reward system that rewards these people for creating an engaging and powerful and positive artist community, like, you might not need the artist till much later in the process than you think. And that's been a thesis of ours for a long time. And we've gotten millions of users on anthems and now shifting to Boombox with no artist relationships. And just passionate people who want to talk about artists and want to talk about it with fans who overlap with them and who share that passion. So it's kind of inverted a lot of this artist, get the artist to build the community and then bring the fans on. We've kind of flipped it on its head, to your point, and started with a lot of passionate fans who are building these artist communities from the top down, or bottom up, I guess. Yeah.
And even like even as you mentioned, Cooper, right? Like that's where like, some of the mechanics of crypto become really interesting because you have music where the fans are so passionate, right? They will go out of their way to be a mod. They will go out of their way to build tools, right, to get closer to their artist. And so when you start talking about composability and things of this sort, right, music is like prime for that, right? Like people like will go at links to get close to their artist or build things to express themselves in music. And that's why doing this bottoms up approach really makes sense because you can not only scale the platform by giving the fans an outlet, but also you can broaden it by giving them the tools to build on top of it, right?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's a really interesting intersection for us because, as you just alluded to, the entire premise of crypto is proving that you were there early. Whether it is you bought an NFT early on, you bought a token early on, you're able to then sell that later on. I think one thing that crypto really hammers home on is like if you buy something early and it ends up becoming popular, like you can make money on the back of it. And so I think one thing that was interesting to me from the design of Boombox was how do we sort of take that same principle of being early and use this on-chain foundation to be the way in which people can actually attest to the fact that they discovered someone early. And so on Boombox today, when you add an artist to your Boombox, there's a date that's associated with it. You obviously get in early ahead of everyone else. And then you have this whole point system that we developed, which actually allows you to be earning from the fact that you are early to these different communities. So I guess before we go super deep down the rabbit hole, talk to me a little bit more about the progression of going from Fanalytics to Boombox, what you guys were initially excited about with it, and then really just the last couple months of us building this thing. How did this kind of come to life?
Go for it, Jack.
So I think maybe I'll cover first the immediate transition from Fanalytics to Boombox, which was kind of a pause moment, a little bit of like almost an oh shit, we've got a huge wait list for something we haven't built yet. And kind of like what we mentioned before, if we were to build something for these people, what would it look like, And we felt really strongly about this points type system based on our learnings from the signing artists. And if you can wrap gamification around fandom, it gets really sticky and kind of addictive, which is great. And then we thought about like, how could we kind of benefit artists along the way and kind of build communities for them that might be really an uphill battle for them to create and kind of manage on their own, or would take several different platforms of social medias and stuff like that. So, and then lastly, I would say like this conversation around like data transparency has always been top of mind for us too, which is like you hear all the time about like artists don't know who their super fans are and like can't get access to them, and not only don't know who they are, but can't differentiate between their fans of like who's the biggest fan, and who is kind of in the common tier as we sometimes talk about. But all those things, and kind of Rob reaching out saying, hey, I'd like to introduce you to Cooper, and kind of going down the Web3 lens, like really was such an aha moment for us of like, okay, this like building on chain actually might be a way that we can check all those boxes in a more efficient manner. And then kind of the timing of everything was very serendipitous too, which like Naveen can touch on more of like, with L3s and all this stuff where like it wouldn't be super cost prohibitive to build something like this. And it could be a really clean way to bridge non-crypto people who are music fans into the crypto world for the first time, and create a wallet for the first time and all this stuff. So that really excited me, but I'll kind of pause there.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to layer on top of that, right? Like, I kind of mentioned it in the intro, but like, how do two things that were big for us with Anthems is like creating a safe space for people to express, and like a lot of folks when we like talk to users, they just don't feel safe, like putting something on their IG story because like it just generally like looked over, right? Kind of glossed over, like I mentioned, I experienced. And like to your point, like you were early to this artist before they blew up. And like there's just like no reward or even like attribution that really happens now. And we see that and we saw that in Anthems is like the feeling that you discover this artist, you claimed them on anthems, they blew up, and like you have your proof, but it's like, the fact that you can put that on chain is like takes it to the next level, right? And we saw that with, that was the goal of NFTs. Um, and there's definitely like, a learning there that we've had, which is like, hey, if you can play off that and give meaningful rewards or attribution to people who discover artists early, there is definitely something there, right? Because we saw the signal in anthems. Um, and so this thought of, Boombox, which we came to with the point system, is like, hey, as a fan, you know, add the artist to your Boombox, you stamp it on the record, right? And as that artist gets popular, you will earn, and that is your reward for it. And then this interesting thing that, this mechanic as well is like, hey, you start adding points, or, adding an artist and allocating points to that artist, some fraction of those points will get banked for the artist in the future, right? And that is, again, when we talk about incentives and how it, crypto can tie everything together to make it meaningful both for the fan as well as for the artist. That's where, we saw it really getting interesting, and why we were like, hey, this is the way. It's
Plus
the path
one.
we got to follow.
Yeah, and I think to really highlight the timing thing you mentioned there, as you alluded to, previous to things like L3 and platforms like Stack, if you were to try and do this on Ethereum or any other product that exists previously, it would be impossible because there would be so much transaction fees associated with it. All these users would need to be downloading MetaMask and using ETH and doing all this crazy things. Probably the most fascinating part of Boombox for me is the fact that most of the current users have never touched crypto before. And so what I'd love to go into is like a little bit more around the build of Boombox, specifically like how onboarding is happening, specifically platforms like Stack under the hood. Like talk me through how we were able to build an app that can be usable for mainstream people that has so much tie-in to the crypto ecosystem without them really even knowing about it or needing to.
Sure. Yeah. I think this is like definitely like people have different sides of what, they believe that, what their hypothesis is. But like for us, we believe this like next big wave in crypto is going to be crypto under the hood for existing habits, things that regular day people want to do, not necessarily crypto native folks. And so the emergence of like tools or companies like Privy, right, where now you can have an onboarding that looks and feels just like you have in your Web2 apps, where you log in with your Apple, you log in with your Google, and a wallet is getting created for you on your behalf, right? And you don't, none of the like, oh, go set up a wallet, connect your wallet, like friction is there for these users who don't even know what a wallet is, right? Like, so the emergence of Privy is a game changer in terms of timing for us, right? Because now this, average, music fan can be onboarded here without the friction. So that's probably number one. As you mentioned, the layer twos and threes and like reduction of fees. And then like, obviously you also teased Stack, right? Like, just the complication of like setting up a point system and, eventually doing like, redemption, right? Like having a company like Stack that is, that is their focus, and they have the pedigree, to rely on them to be like a partner here is also, a game changer. So I think we feel very fortunate in terms of timing that the, community has, matured in terms of tooling.
And also just fortunate in terms of Coop, like, you were integral in a lot of this in terms of both the education on the timing of these things and why it was perfect timing, and also a lot of these introductions to, Privy team, Stack team, just like helping us get this build out in a couple months now to where we're at the point where, we haven't really released it to the larger public yet, and already at nearly 5,000 users, over 100,000 transactions on chain, and just getting things ramped up and sped up to get this thing out the door has been huge for us. So don't want to forget that.
It's definitely like feels like it's in a beta phase where it feels like a good secret right now. You know what I mean? And what to kind of expand on that a little bit further. Putting all these pieces together is not easy. Like adding Privy as onboarding, building out this L3 point system. These are new systems. And for as exciting as they are from a high level about making it easier for people to use crypto, it's kind of uncharted territory. Something that you just brought up, Naveen, that I want to unpack a bit is historically, when it comes to building consumer facing products and music products in particular, most people have just gravitated towards NFTs. Let's sell a membership pass. Let's sell some NFT that represents something within this ecosystem. What I find really interesting about Boombox is that there was a path where these interactions were, cemented on chain as NFTs, but there was a very intentional decision to say, hey, let's lean more towards this global point system that is Boom and have this sort of reward mechanism that works across all the artists on the app. Where if you're earning credit from Taylor Swift, you're earning Boom the same way you are if you added Post Malone. And I think it's something that's very powerful and not to be understated. So I guess from a high level, I'd love to kind of hear more about Boom and the role it plays within the ecosystem. And then specifically for the crypto people that are listening to this, like, why should they care about the fact that there is this Boom point system that exists today and how it kind of plays into their capacity to earn through using Boombox?
Yeah, so maybe I'll kind of touch back on like how does Boombox work? I know I talked about that a little bit at the beginning, but really for starters, you come in, you're a user, you auth through Privy, and you're given 250 Boom, which is the Boom or the point system on the platform. And artists cost anywhere between 1 and 100 Boom, and that's based on their popularity score out in the real world. So for example, Taylor Swift is 99 Boom. She might even be 100 Boom. And that, as I mentioned, is like really where this journey begins of like where Boom gets its value and kind of this community comes to place. So just going back a little bit to like some of our learnings, we found that Gen Z and research is pointing to this a lot, like self-expression is paramount to them. And we've been obsessed with Gen Z a lot lately. And when interviewed and asked, like, what is your favorite way to self-express? Music taste is like landslide winner. And if we can provide these ways, and we've talked about self-expression a lot already on the call, how can you cleanly show how you're a one-of-one person in terms of your music taste? And our big bet here is kind of curating your own Boombox collection of artists is a really clean way to do that and to start that conversation with people. So each artist you add to your Boombox costs a certain amount of Boom. And once you add that artist to your Boombox, it also grants you access to a locked community of fellow fans who have also added that artist. So that checks out that kind of overlap moment where you can get into this room with people who feel just as obsessed as this artist as you do at that moment. And we know that's a really powerful thing, which we're already seeing some major artists right now blowing up in the community with Taylor Swift specifically. A lot of the fans are coming in. So back to the Boom point system. Once an artist is added to your Boombox, you earn Boom when one of three things happens. One is others add that artist after you. So you get Boom earnings from being an early discoverer. So a portion of all the Boom that those later adders use to buy that artist, a portion goes to you, a portion goes to the artist. You're also incentivized to like promote that artist to friends. So if someone's not heard of an artist, you say, hey, go add The Weeknd to your Boombox. Trust me, you'll love their music. And that's how you can continue to earn more Boom. And then the third piece is kind of that mod aspect that we talked about before is if you create content and engage in that artist community, all upvotes lead to more Boom for you as well. And then once you've earned more Boom, you can do one of two things. One is you can go and add more artists to your Boombox with the Boom that you've earned, or you can unlock a higher fan tier within an artist community. So you can go up to bronze, silver, gold, diamond, and platinum, and earn more Boom if that artist blows up, and also earn status within the community. So it seems like a lot, but if you kind of dissect it, in the end, there exists this rich ecosystem where users are encouraged to continue building out their Boombox, self-expressing their taste with friends and getting them to add those artists, and be like a highly engaged person within a fan community, which at the end of the day is everything an artist wants. They want you to be super engaged talking about their music. They want you to spread the word about how great they are, and all of these things, and self-express, their unique music. So, that's kind of the high level Boom point system and how we think it aligns between fans and what they want to be recognized for, and artists and how they want to get their music out more and kind of establish more super fans.
and just kind of layer on that, like in terms of boosting, right? Like you have the multiple tiers of you start at a common fan, boost up to bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, and those serve as a form of expression of your fandom, as like I'm a more hardcore fan than others, but also for the crypto native folks, you earn Boom at a higher rate than folks at lower tiers. And so that's also an incentive to earn better as well.
Yeah, and I want to kind of pull out there some nuance, because the point system here is very fascinating to me for multiple reasons. You touched on earlier, the cost of Taylor Swift on Boom is 100 Boom, which is the most that it's going to cost that Taylor. That price is not going to become inaccessible to people in the future as more people add her or as Taylor Swift continues to blow up. And I think that this is a really important design decision, because you look at platforms like Friendtech, and one of the biggest barriers that you saw is people would be early to these creators, but they would then get to a point where you couldn't join the community unless you had a lot of money. And so if someone loved this specific creator, they couldn't get in if they didn't have thousands of dollars to join. But I think the unique model here with Boombox is that, first of all, we're giving you your first 250 Boom for free, so it costs you nothing. But theoretically speaking, anyone can always add Taylor Swift or 100 Boom, and that price is not going to change. But what I find compelling about this model is you're getting a kickback every time someone else adds Taylor after you, but you can upgrade into these higher tiers at a variable level. And so, for example, Taylor Swift, when one person has her added, is going to have a certain cost with their tier associated with it. But when she has 10,000 people that have added her on Boombox, that diamond tier, that highest tier, is going to be of higher status and also more expensive to purchase. And so I really like this kind of variable model where there's a fixed cost out of the gate. No one's going to get boxed out from joining the community. But as these fan clubs get more popular and as more people join them, there is higher status associated with those kind of higher fan tiers. And the cost of those is proportionally changing relative to how many people are in those fan tiers in the first place.
100%. Yeah. Spot on. And just to add on to that, from the artist lens, you're basically creating this system where people are self-identifying as super fans to a tiered level. So if you ask any artist, what's your biggest challenge? It's identifying the 5 to 10% of super fans who, either have the highest willingness to pay, or have the highest willingness to engage, or have the highest willingness to spread the word, or go crazy and wait outside a concert and get to the front row. And this system, while providing self-expression for fans and allowing them to move up, also then when the artists arrive, hopefully in the near future, a tiered method to be like, hey, here are the super fans who you would want to engage with based on tier. And that's something that really excites both of us, is like creating experiences for those different tiered super fans, which I think is going to be really cool.
+1. And I think the kicker here is that all of those interactions are happening on chain. So when you're adding Taylor Swift to your Boombox, when you're upgrading to a diamond tier, as you mentioned earlier, and I think it's really worth stating again, is that there's been over 100,000 on-chain transactions from 5,000 users, most of those who have never touched crypto in their life and probably don't even know that they're using it in the first place. And so it's pretty interesting to me because, in a lot of ways, I feel like crypto always is getting ahead of itself. And what I mean by that is, I agree with your guys' thesis that like the crypto under the hood thing is largely going to be what drives the next cycle of adoption here. It's very interesting that historically, what's seen success in crypto has been an extremely small number of users spending a ton of money. So you've had platforms like Friendtech where they've had 100,000 users that have generated $200 million worth of volume, right? That might work really well for crypto because these people have large amounts of money to spend. But I think we can all agree that when it comes to music, there's not a lot of money to go around. It's like it's a very talked about subject. People don't spend a lot of money on music. They spend $9.99 a month, and that's all that they're comfortable spending. And I think what's interesting about Boombox is it's kind of taking the philosophy of music is not a space that people spend a lot of money on, but applies some of these principles from crypto that make it possible for them to spend more if they want to, where you don't need to spend hundreds of dollars to use Boombox in the first place. But if you want to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to express your fandom, to get into those higher fan tiers, that is now possible. And I think that is a space that has historically not been really readily tapped into. And I think kind of the biggest, open design space for Boombox to prove out this potential future for how these crypto apps get adoption in the mainstream.
Yeah. I mean, spot on. Yeah,
Yeah.
spot on. I mean, I think, like you mentioned, it was a very intentional design principle, which is like, do not box out the average music fan. And knowing that how global music is, like, you can't have these high price points because you will price people out, right? Like, and as Jack mentioned, like, you have different personas and they all have their value, right? Like, whether it's the high willingness to pay or the person who just doesn't pay as much, but they put like all their friends onto that artist, that there's value there, right? Like, so to incentivize and reward all of those different personas in a fair way, but also, as Jack mentioned, like, have the transparency that the artist can see and understand the fan base and who is who, and how to reward them appropriately, right?
Let's go a little bit more into the weeds here. So I think that we've kind of covered the basis around like what is Boombox, what is Boom, why is this app being built, what are the tenets we're touching on. Give me your guys' psychological reaction to launching an app that has all of these new tools in it, trying to integrate across platforms like Warpcast with this audience of fans that you've built out. You guys are in this really fascinating spot where you're kind of having to juggle a lot of different pieces at once. And I'd love to just hear, like, how has it been getting this app to market, and what are some of the struggles and frustrations you've experienced along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting, right? But it's also very challenging. Things in any, like, launch phase, it's very much front loaded where you get all the bugs early. So that's been challenging. But yeah, I mean, also at the same time, like, launching on Farcaster where you have this very like enthusiastic community, um, and finally putting a very like, music is so broad stroked, right? That's so many people can relate to it. To launch the community that's very enthusiastic about it has been also just like very like invigorating. So it's two sided, right? Like, and we know there's gonna be pain points up front, but like, also, it's going to be front loaded, and you squash those bugs and you start getting a very mature product that scales. And we know that is right around the corner. So it's comforting as well because we've been through that kind of phase before.
Hmm. Jack,
Yeah.
anything you want to add there?
I agree with all that. I think like Naveen and I have our fair share of scars and bruises from some anthems launches, right? Like I think music fans very much wear their heart on their sleeves and like can be, if there's a bug or something's down, they're gonna let you know about it in the Twitter comments and stuff like that. So just to add on to what Naveen said, like the openness to some of the soft launch stuff on Warpcast and openness to working with us through some bugs and ideas and things like that has been like a very welcome, cool thing about the culture, I'll say overall. And then like, I mean, you probably know it better than anyone. Like music is so intertwined into the crypto culture that you can't even separate the two. So I think people are naturally excited about um, music type products that use all of this new technology and L3 and all this stuff, and apply kind of, we're hoping we're applying a lot of what the promise of these kind of new advancements have been, which is like bringing more people on and allowing kind of habits to take place on chain here, which is really exciting. So definitely some challenges, but not without the excitement and willingness of other people to kind of work with us and work through some of those pain points.
Totally. And I'm glad you mentioned that word soft launch, because it's something that I wanted to pull out here. It's been very interesting thinking about how to launch a crypto consumer app in 2024, because historically with crypto, people just want to overhype the shit out of something and then most times fall short on what that actually delivers on the back of it. And I think something that we've talked a lot about internally is we've been making a conscious effort to build awareness on platforms like Farcaster. We launched a frame that had a lot of usage on it, but I don't think there's this intention to try and like shout from the rooftops to crypto people to be like, hey, get in here and add these artists so that you can add them before, all the regular fans come in here. I think there's very much an intention here of like, let's kind of do our thing more in the background here. Let's really prove that we can actually get a lot of real music fans in here in a way that these other apps have not been able to, and be optimistic that crypto people will take note of that after the fact. And I think it's definitely a very different approach to the way that a lot of different projects typically launch. And so I guess I'm curious to hear on your guys' end, how has it been kind of rolling this out in this very iterative manner where, we're doing kind of a soft launch for a certain audience, you're bringing in certain fan communities first. Like, just give me kind of the behind the scenes look of rolling this app out and what you guys have learned from that.
Yeah, let's backtrack. I mean, I think our first soft launch, right? Like getting into the weeds, right? Like we learned a lot about onboarding, right? Like education is such an important part of like setting the user journey in motion, where like they understand what's going on and they want to come back and do it more, right? And so I mean, I think when we first rolled out, right, like there's a lot of things as a founder you like assume away, like, oh, that all makes sense, like, of course they're gonna get it. And like I think we rolled out and we thought we're all good to go, and then we launched and we realized that there's a lot of questions about like, okay, how should I spend my boom? Should I buy like popular artists? Should I get like self-express? And like that was a very like humbling kind of like experience in terms of getting you get the feedback and like, oh shit, like people don't understand, like all understand what's going on here. So we had to like make a quick like hustle to like totally revamp the onboarding to be a little bit more just walking the user through how to use the platform. And we took note of one of our advisors is like really always underscored the Pinterest experience. So Pinterest in their early days they were having a lot of hard time retaining users, and so the biggest change that they saw, the biggest inflection for them, was actually walking a user through their first pin, and the impact that had on retention was so astronomical that like that's what has been emphasized to us. And when we circled back and said, hey, how do we make this onboarding better, we like it took like probably 10 days to like go and revamp the onboarding to really walk through a user, and it makes the onboarding long, but it also conveys everything you need to know about how the point system is allocated, like what to do once to add an artist, once you add an artist, to actually engage in their community and understand there's this like you're unlocking access to the community, and all those aspects that we knew but like was very important, we learned from that initial soft launch. And so that was like the wave one of learnings, right? And I think like since then, I'm probably missing stuff, so Jack, please chime in. I think like since then, like there's also been like small bugs, right, of like your usual like users trying to add an artist and there's an error, and like sometimes like we're just learning things in terms of understanding like the point system, and there's things that come back that we weren't expecting, but as as time passes, we're getting better and better, and the platform's getting more stable, where we're feeling pretty good about it now.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with all that. And just like, every step along the way, as Navi mentioned, like there has been that temptation a little bit to just say, F it and let's put it live, or like, let's lean into maybe the less retentive habits and the more viral habits. Right. And I'm definitely proud of, all three of us in the teams and stuff like that at leaning for a retentive platform here and behavior. And I do feel strongly like this can be the platform where people really curate their music taste and feel pride around what they've built here, and feel pride around the artists that have earned them the most boom, and take part in these communities and spread the word about not only the artist but the platform and stuff like that. So a lot of small iterations along the way, but even in these past couple of days, seeing people who are from the non-Web3 world fully engaging in some of these Boombox communities and talking to people. And we just saw some people posting about like different concerts in different artist communities and stuff like that. Like it's a huge win for us that we've been able to pull it off with all the concurrent technologies and stuff and fixes that were needed and stuff like that. To finally see real people in here using this for the purpose that we built it for has been really cool.
Totally. And I think you can't really understate the value of retention. And I think it's one thing that crypto does a really poor job at, is that it's really good at driving hype and speculation and awareness. But the second that the ability to make money is gone, people leave. And we see this time and time again. And so I think one of the challenges, but also the opportunities that Boombox has is, it's not designed to be this like one-time hype moment where everyone floods in, adds a ton of artists, points are going crazy, and then everyone sells and leaves the next day. Like it very much is a slow burn where you guys are seeding this with different fan communities. There's this pipeline that we're slowly starting to tap into. But to Naveen's point, it's learning every step of the way. The first week, it was really just sending it to close friends and colleagues and being just like, what do you think of this? And just getting that feedback on like, oh, I don't understand what to do here was really insightful to me because it felt so obvious. But I think sometimes you're so in the weeds, having been so close to something, that it's hard to get a very unbiased vantage point from it. And so I'd say that my biggest, takeaway from this last month has been getting an app to a point where it is extremely intuitive and has high retention is extremely difficult. And it doesn't really matter how much time or energy you've poured into the idea or the architecture or the design or the fact that it's built on Privy or Stack or like all of these kind of selling points. You got to build an app that people want to use. And I definitely commend you guys, because the biggest reason I was excited to work with you is that in a lot of ways, I think that I've figured out how to draw hype towards things, but I don't think I've figured out how to make people stick around and be retained in these sort of new environments. And so I'm really excited to work with you guys because you have so much experience having built, anthems and Fanalytics and all these products, that now we sort of are on the next part of the journey, which is like stability, a strong foundation, retention, all of the things that really make or break something, but they're not going to happen overnight.
100%. Yeah, I think if it's one thing I feel confidently about, it's like our ability to like pay attention to the data, pay attention to users, and really like trend that to understand like where do we go next. And like it's been like quite a journey to like from anthems to like culling those learnings and like making our next move, and then doing Fanalytics, and like then segueing into Boombox, right? Like each one of those has been a very like informed decision that's like accounted for data as well as like talking to users and knowing, like you said, it's not going to be an overnight thing. So like don't try to like design it to be that like quick like pump, right? You have to like figure out what do users really want to do and how are they going to retain. And once you nail that, it will scale, especially what we're doing. If what we're doing works for one artist community, there's so many artist communities that if we're aggregating, across, fans, like set of artists that they love, this thing will scale, right? So we just have to like pay attention and nail it. And I feel confidently that we've shown like how to do that. So, I think we'll uncover it. It will take time.
+1.
Definitely. And special shout out to Jacob on our team, who has, been huge in designing this highly retentive app and is just incredible in all these facets and kind of learning along the way and building something that we're really proud of now, but still a lot of change to come, no doubt. But we feel like it's in a good place.
Yeah, it's been a huge learning experience for myself too. I think as someone who uses crypto apps every single day, has been really trying to just stay at the cutting edge of things. We talked about earlier that using tools like Privy and Stack and whatnot have all of this exciting design space in it because it has all these cool potentials that are now possible, but it also comes with sort of the challenge of like, okay, how do you just make it so that people can sign into Boombox with their Farcaster account, right? On the surface, that seems really obvious. You just plug in the Privy kit and then they can just sign in, but then you have all these issues that arise. Or on the Stack side, it's like, okay, we're standing up this L3 and we have hundreds of thousands of transactions. How do you deal with an app when it has such high throughput that you can actually be stable and able to support the fact that there aren't failed transactions or that artists aren't feeling to be added and whatnot? So yeah, I guess I just want to vocalize on my side. I have learned so much throughout this experience. I really feel like it's allowed me to level up in terms of the challenges and how hard it really is to stand up like a consumer grade crypto app in 2024. But I'm extremely optimistic. I think that this podcast is at a very opportune time. I think people are going to look back at Boombox in a couple of months to a year from now and be kind of kicking themselves that they weren't paying attention more at the time of the podcast because of the rate that this has the potential to get very exponential very fast.
Love that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we're full hard launch by the time that this podcast drops, and lots of users coming in. We're ready for that.
Love it. And I guess in closing thoughts here, if people want to get involved with the Boombox community, if they want to play around, follow you guys, what's the best place for them to stay up with A, Boombox, and then B, your guys' individual journeys?
Yeah, so URL is app.boombox.fm. Gets you straight into the app. Our socials as well are probably a good place to follow us. Jack, if you want to drop those.
I'm at Jack Dizza on X, and then I believe I'm at Jack Diz on Warpcast. And what else is there?
You got the
Sorry,
Boombox
at
channel
Jake.
on. Yeah, you got the Boombox channel on Warpcast. You got the Twitter. You got the Instagram and everything. Things are going to be kicking up, but I'd say just to kind of double click on what Naveen said there, best place to get involved, just go use the app.boombox.fm. If you're listening to this, shoot me a DM on Warpcast, on Telegram, on Twitter, wherever it is. Shoot these guys DMs. You know, I'd like to say that they've been extremely receptive to feedback, and I really taken all that to heart. So, you know, if you made it this far in the episode, the best that you can do is go try it and give us your feedback, what you like, what you don't like, everything in between. But guys, it's been an amazing last couple months. I know that we're just starting to get to really know one another, but I feel like we've already shared so much trials and tribulations that I'm excited to see what comes in the future.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Yeah. Thanks.
Cool.
Appreciate you, Coop.
Well, thank you guys for hopping on, and we'll catch you again next week. Bye, guys.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Peace.
Thanks.